It looks like I was looking at the presentation that Meg gave you guys yesterday. Looks like it was great. Was it great?
Yeah, it was really great. It was really clarify all the things that I really do not understand. It was very good though.
All the things. That's good. Does anyone want to share like what they found particularly interesting or helpful, or even thoughts about, what she suggested could be even better?
I mean, this is a bit of like a personal thing, but I finally figured out how to read supporting document for that giant heat map. I finally figured out what it's telling us. So that
Yeah,
was really nice.
it's great that it's right in there, right? Like shows
Hmm.
you how to read it. So that was cool. Yeah.
And it definitely, I feel like I got a better understanding of what's possible and not going forward as we do like try to look for a direction to go into. So
Cool. And so
that's nice.
what do you think is possible?
So, well, I don't know if it's possible yet, but one thing I was really interested in was because I've also been told by people around me, like dollar store, Dollar General, or like Dollar Tree products are like so much more toxic.
Mm,
Or
mm-hmm,
and Dr. Schwarzman mentioned that they do tend to have a bit more of the dump chemicals used,
mm-hmm,
so not so, I guess, refined or whatever. So I wanted to look into that, but I haven't had a chance to go dig into the literature.
mm-hmm.
But she did mention mind story camp. I can look it up, but something campaign that looks into such things.
Yeah, we put it
Mm-hmm.
in that. She sent, so we put it in the materials.
Yeah,
Mhm.
My
mind the store.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, mind the story. Yeah.
I think,
So
or
I think
mind the
that would be
shop, one of
one.
the two. Um,
Something like that. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, that's cool. And I think that was sort of a question that came up earlier that maybe Hayun said, that she was interested in cheaper cosmetics. Are they worse? So sort of a subset of
Hmm.
that, or slightly different. You can see the Venn diagram because, of course, the cheaper things you can buy lots of places, not just at dollar store, but everything at dollar store is going to be, well, cheap. Although sometimes they have like the regular products. I don't know. Berkeley lost its dollar store, so I haven't been to a dollar store in a while, but maybe there still is one. But yeah, but I remember there used to be like some brands that you'd know, like Lysol or something, but then there'd be like random things that were like store brand or that's cool. And what was it that you had been thinking about that you realize now, or even if you weren't thinking about it, but that you realized was impossible?
To really dig deep
Ah,
to get like product specific. I read on the paper that it's impossible. Like they weren't able to get it, but I guess I had to. It had to be told to me.
well, I mean, you could get it, right? I mean, like if you were like, I'm interested in this product, you could take a picture of the label and make your own database, right? Like there's that. But like as
There's
far as,
actually having an app for that. I thought of it too, but
yeah,
I'm like, oh, I don't know. It's kind of crazy because I would have to look at so many.
right. I mean, I think it's, I recently in the last couple of months learned, the term feasible. We've all heard feasible, right? And you sort of have it as a vague definition, but I guess the like actual legal definition when you talk about feasibility is if you can do it, it's feasible, no matter how hard or how onerous or how expensive. So like it's feasible. It's not practical. Now there is a group, and I just thought of them. Let me look them up. Clearia. Yeah, so you guys could look at this. I'll put it in chat. This group has done a bunch of stuff where they're pulling SDSs, safety data sheets, and trying to make it easy for you to find what's in it. So this is another potential source. I have some of their stuff like in a just like an Excel spreadsheet. They must be local. I don't know, but and they also are trying to like make a like if you click to their safe work thing, they're trying to yeah, because they're working with Blue Green Alliance, which is local. They're trying to make it so that people can access material safety. They used to be called MSDSs, now they're called SDSs. They're trying to make it so that they're verifying the accuracy of safety data sheets, which is sort of like verifying the accuracy of product, right? Because that's what a safety data sheet is on. It's about a product. And they found, as you can see in there, a lot of them were um, had errors. And so Okay, so that's the Clearia Insights platform. So
Mhm.
Clearia is another resource for looking up these things. But yeah, I mean, for one person to start from the beginning and figure out all the things is super onerous. You could do it, but it would take you so long. And that's the kind of thing, it was great. I saw this quote on Substack yesterday, which was like, I want the AI to do my dishes and wash my laundry, not do my art and read my books. Like, and this is sort of the analytic equivalent, right? We want the AI to like adequately clean our data and put it together into a database. We don't want the AI coming up with hypotheses or writing our reports. Like, that's what we want to do. So I think that like here, if there's a database that's already been done, it's a little bit like the equivalent of an AI is some human already did it for me, and that's even better. So digging into a specific product or all products is rough. And if you really wanted to know, like if you had a specific subject matter expertise, you could do it, right? Like if you were like, I really want to understand what nurses are exposed to, you could like dig in and make sure it had all the things. And people have done that. I mean, that's been done in a variety of ways. Like that would be like what you would do if you were looking at, like you imagine you're called into a investigation where nurses have higher, and this is true, right? Nurses have higher rates of breast cancer. And there have been people trying to find out and understand why. And you know, the big famous nurses study looked into that and looked into all sorts of things. And I think the answer they found was there's all sorts of things that put nurses at higher risk. And some of those are chemical and some of them are surprising, like working shift work. Like you guys remember, well, some of you might remember Jackie Ferguson giving her shift work talk um, many years ago. So, okay, that's cool. So yeah, you understood the enormity of trying to dig into it. So the impossibility of a individual person doing it, totally. Okay, cool. Anybody else want to say something about their experience of seeing Dr. Schwartzman's talk? Some of you have seen her before, for sure. So this was maybe Willie, maybe you hadn't, but pretty sure Ryan and Sophia have.
I have three things. I realized that is only 33 the toxic is not all the things that I was like, oh, I didn't know that that's only 33. How about other more things? That's what I
Mm-hmm.
realized. Number two is that how we're gonna measure. So we did multiple products what we are
Mm-hmm.
using, and also the workers they are using is how we're gonna measure to add up the compound kind of
Yep.
things. That's the second one. And the third one, I was thinking that even though there is a California Prop 65, nobody even there, even all the packages, I see that all the packages through the Amazon, even
Mm-hmm.
like mixer, a lot of them, but it's there. Nobody knows what it is. So how are we gonna get through it?
I think some people, even if you know what it is, like it used to be you go into a Starbucks. We've lost most of our Starbucks now in Berkeley as well, which is
Really?
fine. But you'd go into the Starbucks and it had on the door like Prop 65 compound is used in this shop. And
Right,
everyone, and so I think like stuff like that, and it's true, like I think there was something in decaf coffee or in the process or something like that that was a Prop
right.
65 carcinogen. But I think it made people also, even if they were aware, sort of not take it seriously. So then, you expect
Yeah.
to see it on like pesticides in the hardware store, but like when you see it like on a coffee shop, you just sort of shrug your shoulders. And I remember when it's similar to like, remember when chocolate, there was that big study about how chocolate bars had all these metals in them? People just didn't understand. I remember talking to a guy at the farmer's market who sold chocolates, and he was like, it doesn't even make sense. How would metal get into chocolate from the plant? It's from a plant. And I was like, oh boy,
Right.
okay. um, so you're right. Like there's all sorts of levels of how do you even communicate this to consumers
Consumer,
or
right.
workers or really anyone. And I think that it's been, I don't know if they've done like studies on how well it performed. Again, it's another regulation that happened and maybe or maybe not has been evaluated. It's hard to evaluate success, right? Like if what would it mean and how would we see it? Like would it mean people bought less of the things that were in a Prop 65 category. I don't know. Like, this is again that accountability research.
I kind of a very scared when I see, the Prop 65, but I've been seeing all this plastic, all the materials,
Yeah.
especially from California, China, everything's on there. So if
Yeah.
I avoid, I cannot use any modern things.
Right. You'd have to make a decision to not use any modern things. And so instead, it'd be good to understand, like imagine you could just like QR code every time you use a Prop 65 and it could add up for you what your annual Prop 65 chemical load was. I mean, that is okay, so there's a number. Okay, well, I want to give, if Sophia or Willie want to say something, or Ryan want to say something, I want to give you guys a chance. If you have a comment or thought after seeing Meg's presentation.
It was super interesting, but I have no further comments at this time.
Awesome. And did you see her Prop 65 full talk a few years ago?
I don't believe I did. I think that
Okay,
was
she like
right
gave
after I
it,
left.
yeah, it was like she gave it sometimes, but not always. Okay, I bet Jen, you've probably seen it a few times, but it's good because she's good. Um, okay, well, I just wanted to give you guys a chance because it looks like she gave a very good talk. It's good. I liked the, how are you using the information in the paper? What do you want to know about the project? And what actions do you think should be taken? And so um, I took a quick look at the stuff that you guys compiled. Alrighty, so here was what the stuff that you compiled, and I think it's exactly what we discussed. I was sort of playing around with it. Okay, so one thing that I will say is this number from the present from the paper? This is emissions in tons per day for each chemical, right?
Yeah, it's the legend straight from supporting document 4.
So for example, this one, this is the sum of all the chemicals across all the uses. And so what is that? And is that how everybody did it?
Mm-hmm.
And so what to you does that mean?
I think the way I haven't actually thought through this yet, but she said the way the heat map is the heat map, the emissions per day, and then they added the data they had on how much of it was like sold
Mm-hmm.
or like given to. So like
Here, I'll read.
I'm
Oh,
assuming it's just basically how much it's emitted into population, given how much is taken there.
right. So then the like here, methylene chloride for paint removers and strippers, it was 4 tons per day emitted per year, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so then what you guys have done is added, for example, for paint strippers and removers, which somebody did here, although she didn't add it up. But here, for example, you're adding across both nail coatings, but yeah, well, you're adding across all products and
Mm-hmm.
all chemicals.
Yes.
Okay, and so what that number then tells you, if you were going to put that in a sentence, it would mean the total emissions for all VOCs on the first and second priority list, right?
I think it's just part of I think that's where it has all 33 chemicals, but yes.
Yeah, no, I think that like, she pulled out, or each of you pulled out whatever was there. I would ask if that's a meaningful number.
I think it was meaningful when we started in the sense we would be able to see which out of the occupations we looked at would be exposed to a greater amount, possibly. Like the maximum they can be exposed is to like this much if
Mhm.
they were to come in contact with all of these.
And I think that's true. You could use it to prioritize sort of across everything. But if we wanted to zoom in on a chemical, like if we wanted to say, okay, what is the highest priority for this like if we're going to write a regulation, which takes like 2 to 3 years to get it through everything, we'll say 2 years. We want to pick the most impactful one. So if we're just starting with this, like in the paper, she's identified the top 3, right? Or the top 4. It's these 4
Mm-hmm.
are the most prevalent. And so across all the products used, these would be the ones to focus on. So then what if you wanted to focus on just occupationally? And then she's got the product categories, and I know that it's in the paper, so maybe you guys can look up too, like if we look in the paper, what is the product category or the chemical categorization, chemicals that are the most important for the population? Do you guys remember where that is in the paper?
It's in a table.
Yeah,
So
so it's in the table 1.
table 1, yes.
Yep. And so you've got 1, 2
Dr.
on
Nuss,
page, yeah,
can you repeat one more? Hound just to sign in, and then you
yeah.
were mentioned about Hound's one. So I want her to hear what you just said
Oh,
about the Hound's the table that will be.
I picked hers just as an example, because
Yeah.
it was the first one that did it, which is that, well, first of all, we were discussing sort of, Dr. Schwartzman's lecture, and if there was anything in particular that you got out of it that you wanted to share. And then 2, I was just talking about how to interpret this number, total emissions, and I just started with yours because yours is the first one to have total emissions. That's a real entry, and that you totaled it across, all the compounds and all the chemicals. And I was saying, what does that number mean? And how would we use it? And so Jin offered that it could be showing, just like you could see what, across the jobs that you guys picked, like who was exposed to the most stuff. So if you wanted to pick, the highest emissions, so not just the number of chemicals, but so that was sort of where we were. And then I was sort of going from there. So I don't know, is there anything you wanted to share from the experience of Dr. Schwartzman's lecture, or thoughts that arose after you or during the discussions?
I'm not really sure if I'm adding anything, but I guess I just thought it was really interesting to have that like deeper insight into the paper. And also I really like that she went over like the 2 ways to look at like toxic emissions, how you can be exposed to a lot of different stuff in like one product, and like like a lot of one chemical in like a lot of products. So I think that's really something to think about.
Yeah, and we were talking about that. Jin said something similar, or maybe, and Daisy did too, like just the idea that you don't really, like if you see all those Prop 65 warnings on all your products, you don't really know what it means. And I think a piece of this, as I'm, let's see, am I sharing my screen? Yes,
Yeah.
okay. So one piece of this is that, like you said, you could sum within nail coatings, for example, and say like people that are using just nail coatings are getting this amount, or even just cosmetologists in general are getting this amount. But you also could, if you wanted to say, if we're worried about cosmetologists, what chemical would be the one that we'd want to focus on? So that's another way. And then you would just add each chemical, say that all this, so you'd add all the toluenes together, and all the ethylene glycols together, and all the you know what I'm saying? Like, so you sum up all the chemicals. And I think that would be really interesting too, to see. And sort of, it depends. I think that we want to think about right now is what our research question is. And so I was saying, imagine that you're in a job like my state job, which is that we're writing a regulation, right? And so writing regulation is going to take us like about 2 years. And so we want to start with the highest priority chemical. And how do we want to focus that? Do we want to find the chemical that the most people or the most products have in it? Do we want the highest emission chemical? Do we want, we're not going to determine any more priority around health. We're just going to use what is in here. Like if it's on the list and it's the first priority, we assume it's worse than the things that are second tier. Do we want to look at one of the things that Jen mentioned, and you mentioned it, how you, in the first time we talked about this, is like sort of this idea that are cheap products more toxic than expensive products. And so you could look also, you could look at that, like, let's compare, but you'd have to, that's a little hard, right? Because you'd have to do a little bit of background legwork of like, pick a bunch of cheap products and a bunch of expensive products and figure out what they have, right? So you couldn't do that from this database. So you might not want to do that, but it's, we were discussing the definition of feasible. It's feasible. It's just you probably don't want to do it for good reason. And so I guess like, do you want to? But you, what you could do is you could, what product people are exposed to that has the most of these chemicals in it by emission rather than just numbers. You could decide the highest priority based on the number of workers in each general, that use these products. Like you could build a little database of all the workers and sort of mark whether they use the products. And you'd want to do it very generically so that you didn't have to do a lot of like you wouldn't want to try and figure out like some people that do house cleaning and hotel work would be exposed to this chemical. And so you'd have to make big categories, right? So you'd have like people who do cleaning of buildings and houses, people who do construction, people who do, so you wouldn't want to give yourselves like 200 categories for jobs, but you'd come up with like, say 20 jobs. And then you as the expert committee would say which product categories each of these jobs uses. And you'd basically make a table like these tables, but instead of the chemical across here, you'd have your 20 jobs and you'd mark if they used each of the product categories. And then from there, with each product category, you could put in the emissions for chemicals. And that would give you then, in the end, and you could add up either the total chemical, you could do both, the total chemical exposure for all chemicals, and then also that are of concern. And also you could do individual chemicals, because then you'd be able to focus on an individual chemical. And you might discover that, because formaldehyde is in so many things, even though it's used in a small amount, usually you still have a huge exposure. So something like that, or you might discover the opposite, that something like tetrachloroethylene is not really used in very much, but it's such a high exposure, it's more important than these small ones used in a lot of things. So like you would have a different approach. So that's one way of thinking about it. And then you could go from there. So I'm sure if you're still tracking, you go from there, you could have an exposure estimate of how many people work in each of those jobs. And so how many people would be protected from how much chemical, and prioritize it for that. So I think that, in here, we're going to say research question refining.
So are we doing 4 or 11? Because in the slide there is a top 11 chemicals. And then he did only for the example.
Right, we would want to do all of them.
Okay.
So that we were sure.
Mhm.
We could decide that we only want to look at the top tier chemicals if we think that that is a better approach.
Yeah, top tier chemical is better.
Yeah, so we can do all the top tier chemicals. So use all top tier. The next question in determining priority is sort of how we want to start and go forward. Like, I think we can either decide to focus on, there are 3 potential foci, right? There's a worker populations, or population, which could be workers, consumers, young people. We sort of discussed this a bit last time. Or we could look at chemical, like we could say, oh, we're just going to look at all the exposures to each chemical and do it that way, which is a little bit more time consuming. We could pick to focus on product category and say, so we could either say, what's the biggest exposure by different subpopulations? What's the biggest exposure by different chemicals? And what's the biggest exposure by the biggest exposure by product category. And so I think that her paper, good. I think her paper sort of gives us the overall, right? So like we don't need to do it by chemical for overall because she already has done that. And so what we want to do is add into that populations or product categories. And so what makes sense to you guys as a direction?
I think I would personally, I think my brain naturally gravitates towards looking at the chemicals and like thus a subset of the occupation, and thus look at the demographics who are more inclined to be in that occupation.
I think I'm also gravitating towards like going by occupation and then like top tier chemicals, just because it's a little more straightforward to identify like which people in which occupations would use like which potential products. I think that it's easier to get a more accurate estimate than going by like more general population.
Because would that not be a little too broad in that sense? Like it would be hard to
Which part?
like specifically get all these for these occupations, or like the occupation part.
I think that the first question would be how to define the occupations. And you would want a balance, right? You'd want it to be defined enough that you weren't talking about a lot of like you wouldn't want to be like healthcare professionals, you know, and it put in together all, you know, from doctors to like all the different types of doctors, all the different types of nurses, all the different types of, you know, allied healthcare professionals, from EMTs to medical management or whatever. But you also wouldn't want to break it down so far that you'll never finish because there's too many categories. So it's a balance. And that's why I was saying, you know, maybe you do 30 categories. And I think like probably the best way to do this would be to look at a list that somebody else has made of like different jobs and different and it might not be jobs, it might be industries, right? You could decide that worker populations are going to be pretty broad, but that they're going to, like, you can imagine it like sort of overlapping areas, right? Like people who do groundskeeping work are going to have an overlap with people who do sort of like building cleaning, and those people will have an overlap with people who work in buildings, and those people will have an overlap with, you know, people who deliver stuff to build, you know, sort of like you're going to have some overlap. And so the question is finding that sweet spot where you're contributing something meaningful, but you're not setting yourself up for disaster, basically. And so you also can you can predefine your worker populations, or you can fence it, right? You could say, I only want to look at workers that make less than $50,000 a year, or I only want to look at workers in agriculture, or you know, something like that. So you could think about if you want to specialize. I mean, one thing you can say is I only want to look at workers in California, but that won't really simplify it enough. So I think that's a valid point. And I think kind of we'll have that problem no matter what we do. Although I guess the worker one is the one that's the most unbound at the moment, since the paper bound the other two categories. Right. So you could do something like a GEM, a job exposure matrix. Basically what you're making is a job exposure matrix using the emissions data as your exposure. And so, which it is, crudely, the exposure. This guy, Jerome Lavoie, did anyone take French? I didn't take French. Oh. All right, well then we can all murder his name then.
Dr. Noz, I have a question. So
Yeah.
if we are doing occupational, for example, like the African American, what they're using for what is that, hair product is a
Right.
little bit, you know, more toxic, and that they do buy their own stores. So not only dollar stores, there is a lot of Hispanic stores, a lot of toxic and a cheaper price. So how are we gonna define? I mean, they're not using the same thing, and then we are not taking all the products, the same product they are using it. So how we're gonna define all this a general idea, but based on the demographic, African American, Hispanic, they can tend to. This is a possibility they use their own thing.
Yes, but we are not proposing to look at consumer behavior because it's
It's
too
not
hard.
consumer, even though it's an occupational thing. Well, if
No,
we had a beauty salon that African Americans is
oh,
different,
I see.
yeah, it's
Well, I think
white.
this gets back to Jin's point. It's similar that if we want to limit within a product category,
Mhm.
that's going to be, we're going to have to go beyond what the paper provides, either, you know, to other databases from, you know, in product databases, which is fine. And I think that you probably won't be able to find in the paper. I don't
Mhm.
think the beauty products are enough different to really say, oh, this group, this subpopulation would use them or not. What you could do if you wanted to would be to make up a bunch of simulated populations. Like you could say, I'm going to compare people like me who don't use curling products, heat protectors, nail polish, nail gel. What else does my daughter use? So much. And she's not even like a high product use person, right, for a high schooler. So like you could say like, okay, we're going to pick like a middle-aged lady who doesn't use any, you know, massive amount of beauty products, and we're going to compare that to a teenager who's using nail coatings, hairspray, whatever. You could do that comparison. And you could pick, you sort of make people, but like you can't go within each category without going beyond and looking at these different, you know, like Clearia or Yucca that Jin mentioned and I mentioned. So that's a challenge, like unless they're using totally different product categories, which I think there probably are, right? Like, but they're not exclusive because I think you could make a case that in African American populations, there's probably more use of hair straighteners. But like we discussed before, there's in more predominantly straight haired populations, there's more use of hair curlers. So like I'm not sure the database actually has those different types of hair products separated.
Okay, gotcha.
So I think that level of detail that everybody's interested in, I think, or at least a couple of you are, is totally worthwhile. And if you want to dig into it, I totally will support you in doing that. But it is more data abstraction it's more grunt work, sort of like pulling that data out of product lists. And it could be very cool. You might discover something really interesting, but you'd also have to do a pretty good job of characterizing what's used in each sort of subpopulation that you were comparing. Like you couldn't be like all middle-aged white ladies in California use what Dr. Noth uses, and all 15-year-olds use what her daughter uses. Like you'd have to, you know, you'd have to do this is like, so this is then you get into doing surveys, like sending out surveys to all the beauty care salons in California and asking for their customers' predominant, you know, race and age and ethnicity, and then what products do you use in your salon? Like this is like a full, I mean, not that you would do this, but like that's like the full way of doing that. And so you'd have to figure out a way to approximate that didn't sort of miss everything. So I think whereas with workers, I think you have more ability to see the difference between different types of workers. And I think, yeah, the Canadian Job Exposure Matrix is a great one to look at. And it might be, let's see, do they say how many? They're looking at chemical exposures. So they're not even doing individual jobs, are they? Or are they taking the CanJam further? They are. So they're not describing the CanJam. Let's look up CanJam. Because it could be that we can just take all their job titles, right? Oh, it doesn't exist. Okay, so they have 147 jobs total. And so you can see this is showing an example of the motor vehicle mechanic job group. Boy, I don't do that. So they've looked at it by job group and period of time, which is important. And I think that was something that Meg touched on, right? That it would be interesting to see how these exposures to these jobs changed over time. Oh, did you find it?
No, that's a Google Doc. We put it in all the articles or we review
Oh,
together.
okay.
So yeah,
Okay.
that's another Google Doc. I'm gonna put that in.
Okay. And so you can see here with the job exposure matrix, they've got 147 jobs they looked at. 105 of them are exposed to to benzene is the agent. They modeled the prevalence of exposure. Do you guys remember what prevalence is? In this case, it's not as important as in epidemiology when you talk about prevalence versus incidence. This is just how many people use it in their job. And so the median is that 72.5% of motor vehicle mechanics in the period from 1950 to 1969 were exposed to benzene. I don't know what the 90th control means, but the intensity of exposure was low for the majority of people, medium for some people, and high for, thankfully, the smallest amount of people. And then this is the frequency of exposure, and then this is the frequency weighted intensity. So they've put together these two pieces of information. And so the part that we might take from here would be the number of jobs. I think that's about it. And the job descriptions. And then what we could do is we could put which products are used. You guys would be the expert. So sometimes you see in these papers that we did this by expert committee, subject matter experts, and that would be you guys. So you would be the subject matter experts and you would say, okay, a motor vehicle mechanic would be exposed to, and you'd put in all these things. You'd put in all the product categories from the paper that they were exposed to. And so 105 product categories, right? So you'd go through each one and put in by product category, workers, product categories and workplaces. Okay, only 96%, 96 product categories. You'd go through and you'd assign each of these to the job. So you would say for mechanics, like we would have, I don't know, you'd go through carburetor or fuel injection air tank cleaners, right? That's probably used by an auto mechanic. So you would put that in as a potential product category exposure. Making sense? That would be
Yes.
step one. Okay, let's put that over here. So step one, get job categories slash. And then step three would be to use product category specific chemical emissions to describe total and individual, what was it, tons per day per year?
I can double check that.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Maybe it's just tons per day. Yeah, I'm not sure how she put it. Okay, the total individual tons per day for all tier 1 chemical. So the complex thing when you get to the end, so what you want to get is a database of jobs, product categories, and chemicals, and the total of those emissions. And then you'll have to decide what the most important aspect of that is. Is it the group that has the highest chemical exposure to a top tier chemical, and then you regulate the top one within that, or something like that? Or should you look at the one that is high and has, so this is what they were looking at in this little display of frequency versus intensity, right? And you might want to make a combination of frequency and intensity. Your frequency is emissions, not hours per week of exposure. And, or I'm sorry, your intensity is emissions and your frequency is number of products. So like if you had somebody that's a window washer and they're exposed to toxic chemical in their window cleaner, their window dryer, the clothes, I don't know, whatever the product categories are. I think clothes wearing is not one of them. The detergent being used to clean their clothes, whatever it is, right? You could say, well, these people have 3 different products that are exposed, so we're going to work on that regulation. Or, so you'd have to decide how to define a heavy burden. But that you can think about as you compile the data. Okay, so I know that there will be questions about this approach, so let's hear them. Or concerns.
this might be a small concern, but
Mhm,
since we're going to be a team of experts, right?
mhm.
But we're going to be looking at the 97 product categories.
Yeah.
Do you think it's necessary to create like another like supporting document or just a dictionary for ourselves to fully understand what that product category entails of?
So they have that description in here. It says, let's see if we can find it. The international standard. Is that what they used? They're using, oh. Okay, you could use again SOCs or oh God, what are they called? National Industrial Category. I can't remember what it's called, but there's the SOCs and the we looked at these before. The
Can you
SOCs
put it
are
in
outdated.
happy and put it in the chat one more time, please?
Yeah, I don't think we want to use SOCs though. NIACs, is that what they are? I
Yeah, I think it's an IX.
feel like there's a better, but that's a lot. I think there's way more than
NIX is all the business character number,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and there's a lot of them. So
Right.
I feel like these guys have done something different. So if we access the English website, North American Industry Classification System, those are industries though.
Dr. Notes, can
Hmm.
you this is one of the sources that same published that Canada one. This one is source that you see what Washington University did it. Then there is click here. Then this is only for Washington, but still that there is job group
Yep.
exposed to the most. You can see that can kind of expose the workers and number and percent. And then all the occupations down there, table specific inputs. And then select exposed item is 247 items.
Mine's not working. Do I have to fill out more of the?
I can't fill out the occupation aspect of this. It says
Mine
select
is
occupation groups, but doesn't.
Data Explorer.
Yeah, mine doesn't. Is it? Are you also using Chrome?
Yeah, I'm using Chrome that I'm open.
It's not working at all for me,
Oh,
actually.
really?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'm gonna share my screen though then.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
Because all we need from CanJam or a similar like this, U.S. Occupational Burden Estimates, is we only need at this point the job
This one, can I
names.
am I
Oh, there's
sharing?
a tab.
Yeah, tab. It's here. Am I sharing? Right?
You're sharing. It's waiting though. It's still black. There we go.
Really? Okay. So if you
Oh, up top, explore by occupation? No.
right, so all the occupation here and major group and detail group and this reason and that they have a number exposed group number and percent and exposed level is any and high, and then this is all occupational things, and then we can certify that and 247 items selected. But this is only for the use the California what is that Washington area. See, diesel was created as a so if you just read it all, data set was created a part of a study conducted by a researcher in the Department of Environmental Occupational Health at the University of Washington and Hazardous Waste Management Program in King County.
Yeah, the website is just not working for me.
Oh, so and also
I mean, I
they
can read it, but like mine doesn't show up. What happens
really
if you instead of all occupations, you say detailed group? Maybe I don't have enough tabs open on my
okay
Chrome.
here detail group here. This is detail group.
Okay, so you have management occupations. Just scroll down.
Engine, yeah.
So
Cool.
they've done what I'm proposing in a certain way, right? So it
Right.
shows like in each group what they're exposed to, how much, and then exposure. They're saying how many people, I guess, are exposed to each of these things. Yeah.
Right, and number and percent too.
Right.
Yeah.
You could do number of percent. So that's another piece, right? If you wanted to look, but they're doing it.
So they're doing occupational group. There is a management occupation. I think this is a NIAG.
Oh, and then you have to select them. Well, what happened? How many
Right.
are there? If
Yeah,
you,
so did you see
There's
this? All of this.
297-ish.
Yeah, all of this I think is
those are almost look like, let's see.
construction, occupation, installer, maintenance, product.
This is the 2018 Census Occupation Code structure. Okay. That's what it says in the top.
Mm.
So I think that you guys could pick, so this is how you define your population that you're interested in. The way that they did it was based on geography because of who they serve. You guys could do something similar, or you could,
Let's see, I was gonna just raise an ethnicity, so sex and education level. They have a nativity citizenship or immigrant, like not citizen yet or something education level. And they did sex and race based. This is
It's super weird, but I use Daisy's link that she put in chat, and it shows me those tables.
oh, that is super weird. I used Daisy's link too, but it was before she started doing the tables. Let me see what happens now.
this is education level. Less than high school, that high school equivalent, some college and associate's degree and bachelor degrees, and on and on.
Oh yeah, mine did too, Jen. That's weird.
This is so I don't even understand, but it works.
That's so strange. But I think so. I think thinking this through, it might make sense for us to use the same classification that we've used in previously, which is what we're using in Bureau of Labor Statistics, right?
Yeah, this one is foreign born, non-citizen, foreign born, citizen, native born, and what we did before. It's
Right.
like,
It's pretty cool. We were
yeah,
on the same thought path. And the part that we're doing that's different than this is that we'd be adding chemical emission amounts, I
mm.
believe is what the difference would be.
But I'm afraid, yeah, this is a lot of, this is like a 200, almost 250, the chemical. So they did exposure, all of this, and then we're gonna have like a top 11, right? That's what we're gonna do. Instead of all this 250.
Right. You wouldn't look at all those chemicals, right? You wouldn't look at all the chemicals, but you would look at all the, I mean, this is the proposal. You guys can,
Right,
you have the top chemicals from Dr. Schwartzman's paper,
right.
but then you'd have the same worker groups as maybe not maybe this was, so these guys used, and there's an advantage here, right? Is they used the 2018 Census Occupation Code structure, so then they could match to census occupation numbers.
Yeah, but not that all USA. This is only the Washington area.
Right. I'm saying you guys could take the 2018, let's see, Census Code, Occupation Code
This
structure.
is
Let me see.
healthcare support occupation that, as you said, healthcare.
Yeah, I'm just looking to see if they've got, I'm not sure. Let's see, census occupational codes. Okay, so looking at
Oh, I
census.
see, I see. They do have a cool thing. This is select expose or all this one,
Mm-hmm,
chemical, and then we can do occupation.
mm-hmm. No,
That's
I think that what I'm proposing we look at is pretty similar to what they've done, but not identical.
yeah, okay.
So they used the
So look at all this occupation and expose and all this group they did. Yeah, they did NIOSH underneath data sources occupation ScanGem. They did a metrics ScanGem workforce demographic data from 2021 were obtained from the National Institution of Occupational Safety and Health, NIOSH, Employed Labor Force, ELF, query system.
That was for the demographics.
yeah, that's workforce demographics. So we could get that too from Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Yeah, and also BLS that we are using.
Right. So, I mean, we can look at BLS and we can use that. That's what I was going to say is we should use that because we've used it before and we may be able to link our projects.
Right, this is employee labor forces ELF query.
And they did say it's a subset of the BLS data. So it would definitely work. We could get it too.
Right.
Yeah, and so then the um, BLF or the BLS, we would want to look at employment,
Mm-hmm.
and we
Yeah,
would
this is
want to have a list by occupation, but we wouldn't want it to be either too broad or too short.
right.
And so,
Here too.
oh, here actually, can I share my screen?
Yeah, go ahead. I am not 100%, but I am about 85%.
Okay.
I personally thought I was on track, but then I got a little lost with all these, like what we're trying to look at specifically right now. I thought we were trying to look for occupational codes or a way to like
Yeah.
find them, right?
So yeah, let's refer back to our overall plan. Our overall
Okay.
plan is we need a list of jobs to assign product categories to from the paper. So somebody recommended CanGem, and so we looked at CanGem. CanGem led to the work that University of Washington did. I'm guessing that they did the following. So if you go, then we're now at Bureau of Labor Statistics, and I picked occupation, employment, and wage statistics because I figured that would definitely have all the occupations. And then I'm going to data, and then the one screen search. And here's what's interesting is that they say, do you want it by multiple occupations for one geographical area, multiple occupations for one industry, one occupation for multiple geographic areas, and one occupation for multiple industries, pardon me. And so this is sort of what we were just talking about, right? Is that do we want to do everything within California, or do we want to do everything within agriculture, or do we want to do we could do one occupation for multiple industries. That might be tough. And we couldn't really do one occupation for multiple geographical areas unless we knew that different products were used in different geographical areas, which we don't know. So let's say the easiest one is we say we want to look at multiple occupations for one geographical area. So I'm guessing what they did is metropolitan or non-metropolitan area, and then they picked Washington. And what was it? Was it
Yeah, County, Washington.
I think that's this, Seattle, Tacoma. So, but we would want to do, let's pretend, California. And so then they have this list of all these things. And then we've got a list in California, which is too small to read. By SOC and then employment numbers for each of these. And how many do we have?
But are we kind of have a potentially agree that we're gonna have not all of the occupation, we have to define and identify that how vulnerable occupation were, and then we find some kind of a top we think it will be, or we're gonna do all occupation.
Well, I think you can define that, is that you could decide
How
that
many will be like kind of a good number, like 10 of them, or
no, I think that you guys could do more than 10. Because if you think about what you did with that one worker population group that you picked, it's not much different than this, right? Richard decided that janitors were exposed to general purpose cleaners, aerosols, general purpose cleaners, non-aerosols, disinfectants, bathroom tile cleaners, blah, 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 right? So he made these choices of what he thought they'd be exposed to. And then he entered the data here. And then he didn't, but he could add up total. He could add up all the tetrachloroethylenes. He could add it, right? So he's already done, that's already there. So the big step is that you want to, like, we just picked these so that we had a spread to look at. And so you guys could experience like how the process, like, is this a process that you can do? The answer is yes, it is a process you can do. And so now you want to have a list that's more meaningful, right? That you can generalize it to something. So you could say, there are lots of ways you can do that. And like in this one, I picked employment numbers, which is here. And so here you could say, all right, we're going to do everybody that had at least one person employed. Or you could say, we're going to sort descending, and we're only going to pick the top. We're going to start with the top whatever, 8.
Mm.
And we're going to look at these occupations. And then if that is quick, we'll add the next whatever. Or you could say we're going to do all the occupations that have more than 100,000 people. Or you could click randomly and end up back on your webpage. Okay, you could do that. You could also say, I think I said this before, like that you wanted to look at, like if you wanted to say, I only want people who are industries where people make not that much money. And so then you could download this one, which I did kind of fast. So I'll show you again. I clicked on here that the data that I wanted to look at was the hourly mean wage for all workers in California. And so then you have then the hourly mean wage, also too small. And you can filter, sort that. You could do this ascending instead. And so then you could pick all the occupations that made less than $20 an hour or something like that.
Mm.
And you can put these things together easily. You could figure out like, we want to do low income workers, but we don't want to do low income workers for whom there aren't that many. And so you could do some decision making of like, how many people are there working as ushers, lobby attendants, and ticket takers by looking at the other Excel sheet, because they're the same, let's look up like taxi drivers. So here you have got, they don't know, I'm assuming is what that 8 means. Estimate not released. Okay, so they're not going to tell you. But here you've got, for example, well, let's find the ticket takers. So here's ushers, lobby attendants, and ticket takers. They're estimating there's about 15,800 of them. So that's less than the 100,000 cutoff, right? So you could say we're only going to look